Hi and happy Heritage Day to all my fellow South Africans. It's a beautiful day here in the north coast of KZN. And my husband has taken the boys to the beach, so that's a real gift for me. So I've got a bit of time to get on top of things, and I thought I would just pop in and say hello. I thought today I would talk a little bit about anxiety, not covering it in any great detail, but just some personal experience about being a parent of an anxious child and some of my learnings in that. It's such a topical thing at the moment. I think the coronavirus, COVID-19, has really created a real a situation in which anxiety is heightened, but we are seeing globally as a trend that anxiety in children is so much more. So when I say my oldest son is anxious, he's not overtly, obviously anxious, and if you didn't know him well, you probably wouldn't even notice. And in fact, I didn't realize how anxious he was until I had my second child, who's got a very different temperament, and it started to become sort of more apparent and more obvious. He's always struggled with regulation. He's always his sensory profile is such, and he's always struggled with sleep. He's for a long time he's had night terrors. So I knew that there was some level of anxiety, but it's really become clear a lot more during this pandemic. For example, just something that happened the other day, we were going to school and he had a little bit of a cough. So I said, my boy, just remember, with the cough, we can't cough on other children. You've got to cough into your elbow just because of corona. And we've done a lot of talking about corona and what the causes are and germs and all of that. And he got himself into a complete panic. And he said, Mom, I can't go to school. And I was like, of course you can go to school. Just, be careful of where you cough. And you don't have corona, but we all just need to be careful. And he wouldn't go to school. He just flat out refused. I said, we can talk to Teacher Andy. And he said, no, what if I cough on someone else? What if I give them corona? What if they think I'm giving them corona? And so I said, okay, that's fine. And we dropped his brother off at school, and shame, we got almost all the way home, and he started crying. And he said to me, Mom, can I change my mind? I said, of course you can change your mind, boy. He said, can we just talk to Teacher Andy? I really do want to go to school. So back we went to school. But it's that kind of anxiety that we don't even often realize as parents. And as they get older, they're able to start voicing it. But when they're younger, they're not. And there was a lot that Joey did that I just regulated. Because I think instinctively as a mother, that's what you do, and also with my occupational therapy training. But it meant that his anxiety was quite well managed. So when he started school, there's sort of a JoJo tank, a water tank, as you enter the school gates. And Joey would run down the hill, and then he would wait behind the JoJo tank. And I would walk in first, and then he would walk in behind me. And this just happened every day. And I just knew that I went in first. He wasn't comfortable going in first. And then his father took him to school one morning, and his dad was like, come on, in you go. And he just melted down. He couldn't do it. And of course, Andrew, not having the background and not taking him to school every day, didn't realize this. And I wasn't doing it consciously. It was just something that I'd factored in. And when Andrew said to me, gosh, is this what drop-off's like every morning? And I was like, no, but did you go in first? And Andrew was like, no, why would I go in first? And, it's just these things as they happen that you become conscious of them and aware of them. And now there are all sorts of things that cause anxiety. And, our genetic makeup, any trauma that we may have had, our sensory profile, as I said, different sensory profiles result in children feeling the need to control their environment differently. But then also the way we parent affects our children's anxiety. And that's what I wanted to talk about today. And this is by no means to make anyone feel guilty. We're all trying our hardest, and I certainly am. But that's exactly what I wanted to talk about, trying your hardest, because one of the key things in our parenting style that causes anxiety, or that can result in a child being anxious, is unpredictability of the parent. Now, I know how I want to parent. Consciously, I know how I want to parent. I know the things that I want to do, and those are sometimes quite different to the way I was parented in some ways, and they're quite different to what was the norms for society when I was growing up, and still is the norms for some people in society. So I have a very conscious idea of how I want to parent, and that's how I try and do it. But the problem is that we've all had this neural wiring in our own brains, and the human brain learns through modeling. So there are pathways in my brain which will model the things that I don't want to do when I'm being conscious. And on those days that it all sort of adds up, and you're really tired and it gets too much and you've been trying your best for really long, sometimes what happens is you just don't have capacity to go on, and then all those pre-laid pathways in your brain kick in and you respond in a way that you don't want to. And that afterwards, as soon as you've done it, that sledgehammer of guilt comes down and you think, oh gosh, I didn't want to do that. But it happens. And when Benji was born, Joey went through quite a difficult transition period for him. And it was very hard for me as well. I had this new little baby that I just wanted to bond with, and this toddler that was acting out more and more. And the more he acted out, the harder I found it to manage, the more stretched I was. And I remember talking to a friend, and I said to my friend, I was just relaying what was going on at home, and I said, I really try so hard, and I know how I want to parent, and then it gets to the point where it's just too much, and I snap, and I do something terrible, and I feel awful. And she said, yeah, I think you need help. And I said, you're right, I do. Who do you think I should see? Should I see a psychiatrist or a psychologist, or, what should I do? And she said, no, Rachel, you just need help. And I was like, yeah, I know, but I don't know who the right person is to see, a parenting coach, a life coach. She's like, Rachel, you just need to ask for help. And it was such a moment for me because I hadn't actually thought of that, and it's the most obvious thing. But she went on to say to me, Rachel, you're trying to do your best all the time, and that's really, really wonderful. But if you asked for help 7 steps back, you wouldn't get to the point of exploding. You wouldn't get to the point of melting down. Like, did you ask someone for help? Did you reach out to your village for help? Did you ask your husband? Did you ask your sister? Did you ask your friend? And I don't, and I think as women we very often don't. And I think there are a few things there. I think, one, we really just want to do our best, so we keep going as long as we can. And then I have to admit, I've got a strong genetic martyr gene. As much as I love my mother and my aunts and my grandmother, they all could be and can be ridiculous martyrs. So I think there's also this thing that unless it's hard, like, we're not doing our best. But what she was saying was so true, because what was happening was my anxious son, had this very loving, caring, always conscious mother until he didn't. And then she was psycho crazy. And so it was completely unpredictable. So he didn't know which one I would be, because he couldn't read how near the end of my tether I was. He couldn't read when it was that I would explode. And now everyone explodes, and it's part of resilience, and it's part of learning to deal with that with life. But having an anxious child, it is something that is particularly difficult for them to handle. And the unpredictability, the contrast was so big between these two people, that it really wasn't helping his anxiety. And just that conversation was such a clear thing to me, because I know as a therapist that unpredictability causes anxiety. And it was just so stark for me, this realization that I was feeding into his anxiety, and I was not supporting him. So in order to support him, I needed to make sure I was supporting myself further. And I would actually be a far better mother if I accepted earlier on that I had reached capacity, instead of trying to go until my tank was done. And it often reminds me, I remember I was running the Malta Marathon years ago, and it was really cold when we started. And I had my tracksuit on, but it warmed up as we were running. And I was completely unprepared for the marathon. I hadn't done the training I was supposed to have. But I got into this mindset where I didn't want to stop to take my tracksuit off, but I was hot now. But I felt like if I stop, oh my gosh, I can't stop. If I stop, I'll never start again. So I think the hardest thing about that marathon, and when I got to the end, I threw up, and I think I probably had heat stroke. If I had just stopped and taken the time and taken my tracksuit off, the marathon would have been a whole lot easier and I would have done a whole lot better. And I think sometimes parenting is like that and mothering is like that. And so it was such a good conversation for me to have. And I learned so much, and yes, it did actually result in a little bit further down the line, me knocking on a doctor's door and getting antidepressants. But I often wonder that if I had learned that lesson earlier, if I hadn't pushed myself to such far capacity, would that have been the path that I'd gone? So yes, today it is about anxiety of our children, but it's also about how we feed into that and how taking care of ourselves really is so important, and how it's so needed in order to be the best parent we can. And sometimes what we need to do is say, I'm full, I'm done, or I'm almost done, I need help. So I hope this allows someone to ask for help when they haven't felt ready to. I need reminding of it often. But yes, I was feeling a little bit strained. So when Andrew said, shall I take the boys to the beach this morning? Normally I'd be like, no, I'll come with, family outing. And I was like, actually, you know what? Yes, please do. Thank you. And it doesn't make me a worse mother. It makes me a better mother for doing that. So have a wonderful day and enjoy Heritage Day if you're in South Africa. And remember, looking after yourself means you'll look after your child better and you will meet their needs better. And yeah, that's all for today.